Okay. When you are a perfectionist, you know that perfectionism can show up in a ton of different ways. If you're not sure what I mean by that, check out the video that I link below in the description. It's very informative. If it's always morphing, how can you tackle it? The answer is that your therapist is thinking about the process, not the content of your anxious perfectionism. And I think you should too. Let's get into it. I'm Dr. Rebecca. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I want to let you know that everything that we do, all of our communication, all of our inner world, all of our interpersonal world, all of our therapy involves at least two components: content and process. So what does that mean? When we're thinking about, let's use communication with somebody else as an example. The content of what you say is like the literal description, literally what you say. The process, on the other hand, is the experiential description. What does it feel like? What is the meaning underneath? What is like really happening here? I'm a shrink. You know I like that like deeper stuff, right? Now, when we think about content and process in the therapy room, they're like very specific things that we're talking about there. And that's not really what I'm going into today. Today, I just want to simplify content versus process for your real life purposes. When I talk with my patients about content versus process, I like to talk about it in terms of, first of all, interpersonal communication. A kind of simplified example of this would be you're at home and your partner walks in and you say, "Hey honey, did you get the milk?" The content of that communication is like, did you get the milk? Did you purchase milk? Is milk coming home today? The process of it can be very different, and the process can be observed in different ways by like different members of this interaction. The like deeper meaning underneath could be something like, could be very simple. Did you get the milk? It could be, are you taking care of me? It could be, did you listen and do what I asked? It could be, you're just like your mother, you never do what you say. It could be experienced by the other person as, are you questioning me? Do you not trust me? It could be, oh yeah, I'm so glad you reminded me. Thank you. There's so much there, right? There's so much that goes into it. And when we think about applying that idea to something like anxiety or perfectionism within your own head, we can do the same thing. So for example, I'm really, really anxious about this project for work. Okay, the content is the work project, but the process is the anxiety underneath, the worry, the fear that I won't be good enough, right? That's when anxiety is like tiptoeing into perfectionism. But you know, if you deal with anxiety a lot, the anxiety about that massive project is not the only anxiety in your day, probably. You're anxious about, did my partner get the milk? You're anxious about, what's the election gonna turn out like? The thing is that anxiety works in a lot of different ways. It's present in so many areas, and the content is almost like these individual weapons that the anxiety is picking up to kind of like whack you with. Perfectionism works the same way. You can be perfectionistic about that massive work project. You can be perfectionistic about your appearance. You can be dealing with perfectionism related to your parenting. I mean, you can be perfectionistic about everything from like your Nobel speech to your handwriting, right? Like it crosses all spectrums. But the thing that's important is the fact that it's all perfectionism. It's all this same little beastie picking up different pieces of content and throwing them at you like tomatoes, and it's mean and I don't like it. The thing that's really important though is that if we spend all of our time on the content, we're not actually getting at the root of the problem, right? The tricky part is though, anxiety and perfectionism love to hide and lob their weapons at you so that you only see the weapons, right? You only see the content. It feels like this massive project is the enemy. It feels like being imperfect is the enemy. It feels like your sloppy handwriting or your imperfect makeup or your imperfect friendships or your imperfect life in general is the enemy, and it's not. Perfectionism itself is the enemy. Anxiety itself is what we're trying to tackle. So as we frame it this way, as we start to notice that it's the process that deserves our attention and not the silly content, as as shiny and exciting as it is, that really starts to give us a much clearer path forward. Pay attention to the process. How do we do that? I mean, honestly, the number one way to do that, if the thoughts are particularly painful and they're really interfering with your life, is therapy. I'm a therapist, I would say that. But the other ways to think about it is to kind of isolate the thoughts themselves and stop even wondering what the thoughts are talking about, right? The thoughts themselves are part of the process. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. The thought is, I am really anxious. The thought is, I am not feeling good enough. I need to be more perfect. The thought is, I am in pain right now. Look at that separately from the content. Allow yourself to not think about the massive work project and to take care of yourself in this moment of difficulty or pain even. Talk to a friend, engage in self-care, like real self-care, not like a bubble bath, like setting boundaries, giving yourself rest, etc., etc. Do something beautiful for your life. There's also really great techniques in workbooks that I love. One of them, I'll get it right now. Okay, one second. This is one of them that I really love. It's called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. It uses ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is like my jam. I'll put a link to this one below. It's really, really great, but this helps you get into just like, let's think about this process. Let's think about the thoughts. Let's not get distracted by the content. And then be self-compassionate, be understanding when the content is so shiny and so distracting that you just have to give into it for a minute and then go back to the process and take care of yourself and your thoughts that are in pain. So I'm curious for you guys. This is like a little bit of a headier concept, a little bit more complex, and I tried to give as quick of an explanation as I could. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. What questions do you have? Does it feel possible? I was gonna say, does it feel easy? Probably not. Does it feel possible to just notice the process and put the content on the shelf for a moment? How can I explain this further, maybe in another video? Please let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say. And in the meantime, go ahead and click over there for this other video about perfectionism I mentioned. I think you'll love it. And click here to subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Bye.